Coming up on this episode of the Curt Steele podcast, I give my thoughts on the joint practices between the Jags and the Lions, and I preview Saturday afternoon's preseason game at Ford Field. Buckle up, Buttercup. It's time to start the show. What up, dude? And welcome to the Curt Steele podcast, your trusted source for Detroit Lions news and rumors. I'm your host, Curt Steele. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with fellow Lions fans just like yourself. Follow me on your favorite social media platforms and visit curtsteele.com. Today is Friday, August 18th, 2023, and big ups to my family over at Lions Nation Unite. Let's go ahead and get into it. Before we talk about the action on the field in joint practices, let's see who's riding that choo-choo pain train, baby. Now, St. Brown and J-Mo both went down on day one, hurt, and they sat out day two. J-Mo is being shut down for the rest of the preseason with that hamstring injury, and St. Brown, he got that tweak, that right ankle, but it doesn't seem long-term. He started to come back sometime next week. Dan Campbell said Monday, or at least by the Carolina game, which is next Friday. Now, the Lions are down wide receivers big time. They got 4 receivers sitting out. Of course, you had St. Brown and J-Mo. Then you have Denzel Mims and Maurice Alexander. Both have been out. Trinity Benson was back, though, on day 2 of joint practices. And 2 big names set out on day 2 of joint practices, which was center Frank Ragnow and defensive end Romeo Quar. Doesn't seem to be injury related. It's just probably some vet management, some snap management. Undrafted free agent running back Mohamed Ibrahim also missed the second day of joint practices. He and Alexander have not practiced since the Giants preseason game. So hopefully those young fellas are all right. We may see them next week versus the Carolina Panthers. But you look at this wide receiver room kind of getting banged up. And Dan Campbell talked about maybe bringing in an extra body at receiver to kind of get through the rest of training camp. So we'll see what happens on that front. We already knew that Jamin was going to be out 6 games with the gambling suspension. So these preseason games were kind of important for him in his development. So hopefully he can get back. He continues to work out and continues to rehab. That he had a hamstring injury, if you guys didn't know. But you're looking at what he's doing. Hope we can get him back on track. Now he's eligible to come back to the team after week 5. Oh, excuse me, after week 4. So week 5, he has 2 weeks to kind of get acclimated back to the team. Weeks 5 and 6 when he comes back in week 7. So hopefully we can get him back on track. He continues to rehab and work out while he's out during his suspension. Okay, we talked about the injury front. Now let's get into what happened during the joint sessions. Day 1, looking at the reports coming out of Allen Park, think it was pretty even. Maybe a slight edge to the Jaguars. The one thing that was a notable difference for most in attendance was how fast the skill positions were on the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, particularly the linebacker position. They moved in and out a lot faster. Goff struggled a bit, of course, losing his number 1 target in St. Brown. But my man, the little guy, Khalif Raymond, stepped up once St. Brown went down. He showed why he got that contract extension. He stepped up in the Sun Guys absence, and he became Jared Goff's favorite target doing team drills on day 1. Now, another thing that happened good on the offense on day 1, because Frank Ragnow did play day 1. He didn't play day 2, but he played day 1, and that the running game got going on day 1. Montgomery and Gibbs had some nice runs, especially down there in the red zone areas. I guess Gibbs had a nice, like a 10-yard burst. So you look at what's going on with the offensive line. As long as it's fully stocked with the starters that's supposed to be there, it is going to be a formidable running game for the Lions against any opponent. They're going to be able to open up some running lanes and protect Goff. You see what they did last year, and I think it's just going to be improved this year with a healthy offensive line. Now, a couple of undrafted free agents. We talked about how down the offensive weapons in the receiving core was down, but you had two of those undrafted free agents that's been playing well throughout this preseason and training camp. Dylan Drummond and Chase Cota continue to impress, catching passes from Teddy Bridgewater and Nate Sudfeld in those backup roles. Nate Sudfeld threw a 50-yard bomb on day one to Chase Cota. You look at what's going on with that. Hopefully, Cota continues to impress. He, in my opinion, is the second coming of a Tom Kennedy, and I think that's why they were able to say bye to the long time practice squad, and then last year getting a spot on the roster player for Detroit. So Chase Cota, is stepping up. Get to the defense. That secondary struggle at the beginning of the day. It was just bad all the way around. First team gave up a long touchdown to Calvin Ridley after kind of mix up in coverage. Oh man, Jerry Jacobs, that dog, who he is, man, because that's my guy. I like Jerry Jacobs. He passed Calvin Ridley off to the safeties, who definitely didn't get the message because he ran straight down the field for a touchdown. Nice bomb from Trevor Lawrence. So, but it wasn't all bad for the defense. They rebounded later on in practice. C.J. Gardner-Johnson had caused a couple fumbles. Man was putting the hit stick on out there. Full pads. He was doing some things. A couple of Jags running backs didn't take kindly to that, but it is what it is. His joint practices that for day one was full pads, and he was bringing the wood. Brian Branch and Cam Sutton played well in coverage. Not great, but well. Breaking up some passes, like Sutton down on the goal line. Branch is just a beast. That dude, he is definitely becoming. I told you, man, he's getting to be him status. If he can translate what he's doing in practice and in preseason to the regular season, he can reach that him status. I think he's going to be the steal of the draft for the Lions, man. Him falling to the second round was definitely a mistake. People take that 40 times in the combine a little too seriously sometimes, and see if you watch the tape that matters is him at Alabama, and he's been doing that since he's been with the Lions, of course, in training camp and in preseason. And another guy that had another good play in coverage was my man Rodrigo. He's getting better in coverage. We know he can find the ball, but he's working on his coverage skills. I like that out of the second-year player out of Oklahoma State. A slow start by the defense, but they rallied. Like I said before, I think it was a pretty even competition. What most reports coming out of Allen Park, but a slight edge went to the Jacksonville Jaguars on day one of joint practices. Hey, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop me a comment. Hit the notification bell so you know when you're getting a fresh video right here on my YouTube channel. And for more Detroit Lions content from me, head over to curtsteele.com, where you can find links to my articles on Sideline Report and yardbarker.com right there on the homepage. Follow me on your favorite social media platforms, X, Facebook, or LinkedIn, or whatever. The links to my social media accounts are right there on the homepage of curtsteele.com. Also on the homepage is the link to get yourself some Curt Steele gear. You see the Regal line right here, and you see that "What Up Though" shirt, man, right there on the homepage. The link for the Curt Steele gear from the LNU shop. Because shout out to my man Henry Moore and those people over at Lions-Jags Unite for hosting my gear right there on their shop. So go over there to lnushop.com and grab yourself some Curt Steele gear, man. Support your brother, man. And that's going to help me bring more quality content from you right here on my YouTube channel. Now let's get back into the action. What happened on the field? Day 2, baby. What's going on? Day 2 was better for the Lions. However, it was shorts and shells. Now, I think this was a clear attempt by both teams to prevent any more injuries. You had a couple players going out for the Lions, and they're like, "Hey, man, we got to make sure we can get through the rest of these practices without any incident." So they went down to shorts and shells. That means limited contact. Kind of touch tackles. So you can't, you're not full go in shorts and shells. But the defense played much better at the start of day 2. They had the 7-on-7 drills in the red zone area. The Lions defense held the Jaguars out of the end zone 6 out of 8 attempts in that 7-on-7. CJ Gardner-Johnson and my man Kirby Joseph, Big Curb, continue to play well as the starting safety combination. Haven't heard much from the veteran Tracy Walker in camp. Think they're just maybe easing him along just to make sure he's going to be fully ready to go for the season. But Kirby Joseph and CJ is doing a thing back there in the safety combination on the back end of the defense. Now, getting to the defensive line, we know Aiden Hutchins is going to do his thing, but a guy that stepped up, a second-year defensive lineman, Josh Pascal, continues to improve and impress. On day 2 of joint practices, my man had a run stop. He had a sack, a pressure, and he broke up a screen pass. So I'm like what I'm seeing out of the second-year player out of the University of Kentucky. We're going to see more and more on display in the second preseason game, the depth of this defensive line, and Josh Pascal is definitely part of that. So the Lions played tough against the run on day 2 as well. Linebackers filling in the gaps, defensive line, making some stops. So you look at what's going on with that defensive line. Now, it's easier doing in shorts and shells because it also comes a lot faster because there's really not a lot of contact allowed, maybe a push here, a bump there, but not full tackle. With that being said, Captain Jack was playing well, Jack Campbell, but he got a little too excited, man. He threw one of the Jags running backs to the ground, man, and that almost caused a brawl. But, the Jags kind of surrounded him for a minute. Then the bench is kind of clear because, the Lions going to come through his rescue. But it didn't, result in a fight. Just some pushing and shoving, and it kind of ended quickly. So, but Captain Jack out there making some plays, man, but getting a little too excited for a rookie out there doing joint practices, man. But he's going to play to the whistle. That's the type of guy he is. Now, the biggest play of the day on offense, because it's not really a lot of, the offense would just move the ball up and down the field. They kind of took advantage of the Jags defense a little bit on the second day of joint practices. But the 50-yard bomb from JG to his whoopee. Y'all know who his whoopee is. If you don't know, is Josh Reynolds. Number 8 got down the field. I don't know who the hell was covering him because it wasn't nobody, because he was wide open in the middle of the Jags secondary. Caught a touchdown, well, no, not the middle, but on the side of the Jags defense, down the sideline, man, for a touchdown. But I like the down the field throws by Jared Goff. You saw that more now that St. Brown was out of practice. So he went down the field more because the guy who is security blanket in the middle of the field was not there for day 2 of practice. So that's what he took more shots down the field. Of course, he had Marvin Jones got involved too, and a couple of the guys, Khalif Raymond, doing their things. But Josh Reynolds had that big play from Jared Goff down the field for a 50-yard touchdown against the Jaguars on day 2 of joint practices. Now, for me, looking at all the reports coming out of Allen Park, what happened during the joint practice sessions, the clear star of the joint practices for the Detroit Lions was CJ Gardner-Johnson, and it wasn't even close. I said this last night when I was on with the guys from D313XP podcast. Gardner-Johnson is walking his walk and talking his talk. And when you can talk your talk and walk your walk, man, he's doing everything. He's flying around. He's breaking up passes. He had an interception on day 2 where Trevor Lawrence just kind of launched the ball down the field, and he just kind of played kind of like a center fielder, just waited for the ball to come down to make the interception. But he's in the right place, making the right play, and he's bringing a level of aggressiveness to the Lions defense and that they haven't had, especially in the secondary. So I'm liking what I'm seeing out of CJ Gardner-Johnson. He's a vocal leader and a great addition to this team. I wasn't sure if he was going to be a long-term fit for the Lions because of the fact that they drafted a guy like Brian Branch, but those two guys together, they can make a formidable opponent for any wide receiver core facing up against those guys in the back end of the Lions defense. So I'm liking what I'm seeing out of both guys, but especially CJ Gardner-Johnson, man. He brings a presence that we haven't had in the Lions secondary in a long, long time. So if you look at the joint practices, I think I said earlier, I gave a slight advantage to the Jaguars on day two. I'm assuming day one, and the Jaguars had to the Lions made adjustments, and they were better on the second joint session. So one to the Jaguars, one to the Lions, and we'll see what's going to happen on Saturday. Now, here's a quick preview of what's going to happen on Saturday. Don't look for any starters from the Lions and a few key rookies from the Lions on Saturday. They will not play. Dan Campbell's already said this. It will be the backup show at Ford Field as there continues to be some position battles on the second and third string on both sides of the ball. I think this is a tool they're going to use just to kind of, this is like that. If you go back to the other, previous kind of schedules where you had that preseason game where most of just all of the backups play most of the majority of the snaps in preseason, just because of the fact that they already know who the starters are going to be. So they want to make sure they can get those second and third string guys lined up and give some guys some opportunity to put some film, put some things on film for other teams, because they're not just playing for the Lions this weekend. They're playing for their football lives, and they may be able to put some plays on tape to get the attention of other teams around the league. And just a reminder for us out of market fans, that this game will be nationally televised on NFL Network on Saturday, August 19th. That's tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we won't be stuck trying to watch it on NFL Plus or wherever we kind of stream it from. The game will be nationally televised on NFL Network tomorrow at 1 p.m. So go ahead and check it out. And, next week's game also will be nationally televised on CBS. So make sure we getting 2 nationally televised games in preseason, man. That's what a difference is with the Lions and how they're viewed by the NFL this season. Now it's time for Dessert with Curt. Sweet bits of news and notes about the Detroit Lions. Today, I'm going to switch it up a little bit, right? And I'm going to give some thanks to a couple of podcasts for inviting me on this week to talk Lions football. On Tuesday, my man Darcy Marville had me on his show, Detroit Lions News. I was on there with John Macaroon, my man Big Walt over there, and it was a great time. And it even had I think his name Mark Schwartz, former Detroit Lions wide receiver. We chopped it up, Detroit Lions football, talked about training camp, or talked about what we see for the Lions this season, and it was a great time with Darcy and those guys on Tuesday night. And then last night, my man Nomis J. Yeah, man, if y'all know who Nomis J is, go check him out, man. He does great Pistons content as well on his own channel. But him and the guys from D313 XP podcast had me on last night, man. It was great collaborating with those guys. It was so much fun talking Detroit Lions. We kind of just talked about the Lions and talked about, some of the guys that the current Lions remind us of in different eras of football, especially some of those safeties. I like the camaraderie of going out and having being on other shows, man. It's great collaborating with other Detroit Lions content creators, man. So thanks to, again, Detroit Lions News and D313 XP podcast for having me on this week, man. And that is your Dessert with Curt for August 18th, 2023. Thanks for joining me for today's episode of the Curt Still Podcast, your trusted source for Detroit Lions news and rumors. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop me a comment. I'll get back to you whenever I can. Hit the notification bell so you know when you're getting fresh videos right here on my YouTube channel. For more Detroit Lions content from me, head over to curtstill.com. You can find links to my articles on Sideline Report and yardbarkers.com right there on the home page. Now, you got to do your man Curt Still a favor. Whatever you're doing in life, you got to boss up, ball out, and be the best version of you that you can be. This is Curt Still, and I will holla at you real soon.